There really aren't that many events that shock me anymore. We have normalized violence and criminal behavior to such an extent, I think people in the West have finally started getting used to it.
She's just shooting up right there in broad daylight. So lady overdosing. Thank you so much. This is a camera mic. I'm not filming you. As you can see, we can't film. Getting interrogated by the police there.
But recently, on August 23rd, an incident occurred in Dundee, Scotland, that is urging me to make a video about it. It's difficult to predict with exact accuracy, but I think this is one of those events that mark a new low on a global scale, at least for the long term. I think this is a before and after type event. So for those of you who are not in the know, a 14-year-old Scottish girl has been going viral on social media for appearing in public wielding a machete-like knife in one hand and a hatchet in the other. I'm not gonna go by some random accounts post or news outlets to have a clear understanding of what's going on. I think right now is a time when everyone is just gonna start talking shit to push a political view. So I'm just gonna go by what I see and hear in the video itself. Now, I can't show the video as my channel already has one strike, and if I get another, I'll get banned from YouTube. So I'm just gonna leave it in the description and you guys can check it out. But what I can say from the footage is that one of the girls keeps yelling for the cameraman to go away and leave her 12-year-old sister alone. I'm not an expert on the Scottish accent, but from what I hear, the girls are saying, "They are fucking 12, mate. These are fucking kids, bastards. And get the fuck away from her. Don't touch my sister, she's fucking 12. And they are yelling this at the cameraman, who instead of leaving is recording the whole thing and instigating these really young girls by saying, show the knife, that's it, show the knife. As if trying to catch them committing a crime to later show the police. One of the first things you notice is that the cameraman has a really thick Somalian accent. The second thing you notice, this guy is not backing off. He's not giving a shit about the warnings or distress signals from these young girls. He's just trying to get a gotcha moment, pretty much trying to build a case against them on the spot, which is the usual for any coward little shit trying to provoke a viral sensation. How fucked up do you gotta be to post this on social media and expect anyone will take your side when harassing a group of 12-year-old girls? This is not how an adult behaves or handles this type of situation. But hey, I don't have the full context. Who knows? Maybe the girls are in the wrong. Maybe they are the ones that are going around, knives in hand, harassing people. This could be a pretty shit side of Scotland. Now, I could go on a rant on the failures of the European immigration system and how mass diversity is social suicide and all that stuff. But it would be a pretty easy target, and it's nothing I haven't already discussed before. Earlier, when I said this was a before and after type event, I meant that this is gonna be what's going to radicalize a new generation of women. So basically, a new wave of feminism is coming, and this is the beginning. That's what I believe. Historically, every feminist movement has been radicalized by leftist political groups and ideas. So for example, anarchists were trying to take over the first feminist wave. And then, during the second and third wave, Marxists and socialists were the ones dominating the frame of the feminist argument. And finally, modern-day feminism, the fourth wave, is heavily influenced by intersectionality, which is another offshoot of progressivism, tied to critical race theory, but I digress. The point is, there is a pattern going on here where radical far-left groups disguise their political agenda as women's issues with the goal of taking over their movement. That's why you can see feminists on every front of the leftist war, but none of them winning a single battle. They are essentially liberal cannon fodder. This is why each generation of feminists becomes more radical than the last, essentially getting absorbed by the far left as time goes on. Now, the thing these movements have always had in common is that they were born during a time when it was really safe for women. I'm not saying it wasn't unfair or that crime didn't exist, but generally speaking, it really is safe in the West. And in that safety, feminism thrives. When I say the word safe in this context, people usually get triggered. And it's this reaction that makes me believe that I'm right when I say it. Because modern day Westerners don't understand what cultural violence and oppression is or looks like. If the West was truly the oppressive nightmare modern day feminists claim it is, women wouldn't even have the right to speak out or protest at all. As a matter of fact, it's these displays of public discontent that exemplify how free and fair the West is compared to everywhere else where oppression is real and nobody is allowed to say anything about it without the threat of violence at their heels. So, with the West gradually becoming more progressive over time, we have the reality that at the expense of dismantling the patriarchy, the men growing up in these systems become weaker versions of what they were in the past. And this translates to a more unsafe society for women. It's ironic, but that's how it works. Because by destroying patriarchal systems, feminists have weakened the virtues that build their societies in the first place. Virtues that are still needed to maintain them, such as strength and self-sacrifice. Feminists need to get rid of strength because everybody needs to be equal. And then self-sacrifice is the new boogeyman for every single childless 30-year-old woman. Modern feminism only accounts for the oppression experienced by women in a safe environment, that is, the Western world, which is automated and heavily regulated, as opposed to the third world. These women are institutionalized. By every means of the spectrum, they are the new bourgeois, heavily educated, high income, without any practical skills, and living without much meaning except to be almost purely hedonistic, which is why they attach themselves to groups of radicals that also thrive in times of safety, provided by the same patriarchy they try to destroy. Virtue signaling is another form of showing off status. None of them really mean what they say, let alone understand it. But being a revolutionary sounds good and that's all they care about. But if there was a real revolution tomorrow, they'd be the first ones to be thrown to the gulags, to the concentration camps, because these people are useless. They don't want to work and they don't know how to work. So anyway, now we have new generations of young women who will never experience any of this privilege. The $10 pumpkin seed frappuccinos, the tech bro unemployment industry with 2-hour meetings every morning and 4 hours of preparing PowerPoint presentations in the afternoon before calling it a day, the free or almost free accessible education through equal gender programs, or the oppression, that is, the Western patriarchal oppression, which is the fun kind of oppression, the one you can protest freely about or yell at other people or put a little hashtag next to your social media account. The modern feminist is the realization of Robespierre's fears, that is, the citizen that wants the revolution without the revolution. On the other hand, new generations of women will be thrown into a world without borders, where every week or every day they will meet face to face with large groups of fresh off the boat migrant men, likely from middle of nowhere Africa or the Middle East, who lack the sensitivities or common sense to not harass them in public, sexually or otherwise. Men who don't know how to look at them as human beings, or don't know that pursuing sexual relationships with underage girls is wrong. Their words, not mine. And this is what's going to radicalize women in the future, or right now at present. This unsafe environment that's slowly spreading through the West, where traditional policing is completely ineffective and can only keep up with appearances, building the illusion that everything is safe when it's not. These young women will not have the privilege of being protected by their men, either because they are weak or the system does not allow them to do so. So they won't give a shit about being called racist or about messages of openness and inclusion. They will only care about not being raped. And who the fuck can blame them for that? The only thing they will know for sure is that the liberal system has failed them. This new generation of women, the fifth wave feminists, will be radical realists out of necessity. And the only political spectrum that aligns with these views is the right or far right. It's gonna be a historical reversal. I can see it happening in real time already. On Twitter, where they are canonizing this little girl with a machete and axe as the new Boudica or someone of that heroic nature for trying to defend herself and her sisters. In the meantime, the left is censoring or brushing it aside as just another unfortunate act of violence, typical of the cosmopolitan ecosystem. Obviously, these new generations of women will be persecuted for their views or actions, even if they are on self-defense, which will radicalize them further. And the persecution will be done by the remnants of the previous feminist waves who will label them and recognize them for being right-wing. Because women living in wealth will never move to areas where they are anywhere close to migrant men. It will only be the low middle class girls that will go through these nightmares, becoming even more radicalized in the process. If the modern day feminist is a representation of weak masculine virtues, in the sense that they only worship and have superficial things, the fifth wave feminist will be masculine in the other direction, where they'll have to be more aggressive, more violent, ready to start a fight if they need to, which will initially be applauded by the traditional feminist. Men have become such a problem in today's world, young women have to resort to real violence to exist. But then will quietly walk away from the conversation as soon as they see that the men young women defend themselves from are gonna be blacks or brown migrants. Obviously, leftist governments will see this as another chance to become more draconian, to further push for the completion of the surveillance state, and all in the name of protecting young women, which will not work. But that's the point. When you have more policing but not enough police, crimes will not stop. You will just have more reported crimes, which will overflow the system and toss the burden onto the taxpayer, which will then be another excuse to raise taxes and once more push for the completion of the surveillance state dream. I hope I'm wrong, but the left is so predictable. It makes sense to assume each section of our population that's not thriving in today's liberal world will most likely become a victim of it. And my message is to at the very least be aware why things are happening instead of being absorbed by them. Kind of like going back to the saying, if you focus too much on the tree, you're gonna miss the forest, or something like it. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Thanks for listening. Bye.